If it's Tuesday, you are Zooming with the Douglas County Democrats. So, welcome. Thank you for joining us for tonight's forum. This is our chance to hear from the Democratic candidates for sheriff. My name is Pat Willer, and I'm the vice chair of the Douglas County Democrats and co-coordinator, along with Noreen Spears of the forum. Tonight's event is part of a series. We heard last week from the candidates for district attorney. Next on the schedule will be the candidates for the Kansas House of Representatives, District 10, which will be next week, July 7th. This is the seat that's currently held by Eileen Horn, who is not running for re-election. So particularly those of you who were represented by Eileen Horn, make sure you tune in. Next on the schedule after that would be the same week on July 9th. We will have a campaign update from Michelle de la Isla, Mayor of Topeka and candidate for U.S. Congress. This will include a question and answer period with a focus on healthcare issues. Candidates for Douglas County Treasurer and Register of Deeds will appear in a forum on July 14th. If you miss any of these events or want to share them with others, and we really encourage you to share them with others, the forums are recorded and they are made available on the Douglas County Dems website and YouTube. So please keep that in mind, and if you found something notable and you think you want to share it, that would be a great thing. It's one of the advantages of Zoom that we can do that. Here's an important date to remember, because after our last forum on July 14th, you need to mark your calendars for July 15th, which is the beginning of early voting for the Democratic primary. The final day for in-person voting is August 4th. This year's primary is critically important. We have multiple Democratic candidates, including for the sheriff's race, which we'll be talking about tonight, for several seats that will have no Republican candidate in November. So the winners of the primary will have won the election and face no further opposition. These positions include county commissioners, both districts 2 and 3, district attorney, sheriff that we're talking about tonight, Kansas House of Representatives for District 10, County Treasurer, and Register of Deeds. Voting in the primary is your chance to select our future leaders. So we strongly encourage you to vote by mail. If you have not applied to get an application for the advanced ballot, which is the opportunity to have a vote by mail ballot sent to you, you can do so at ksvotes.org. That's ksvotes.org. To promote early voting, the Douglas County Dems will be calling thousands of voters over the next couple of weeks who have not yet requested their advanced ballot. So for that, we need help. If you can make calls or text to encourage early voting, please volunteer using the link on our website or just email me, either way. I want to thank you now for your attendance tonight. I want to thank those who are already volunteering with the Democrats. And now we're going to turn to tonight's forum. We've got a lot to discuss and we're eager to get going. I'm pleased to introduce you to our moderator, Kwam Dowdell. Kwam is a lifetime Lawrencian who played basketball at Lawrence High, then college ball. He became a teacher and is now teaching algebra and history at Highland Park High School in Topeka. He's also the head coach of the freshman basketball team and the assistant coach of the varsity team at Highland Park. In the meantime, he's also been very active in Lawrence as a youth coach in basketball and baseball, I think. I will turn the evening over to Kwam, who will introduce our candidates, and then we will proceed with the questions. Thanks to Kwam and to our candidates for their participation. Kwam, you need to unmute.
There we go. Thank you, Pat. This important position of the sheriff, Douglas County Sheriff. With full disclosure, I have to say that there's like a 6 degree of separation with all these guys with me. I've never met any of them, but I do have some kind of link with all of them. With Doug, his little brother Tim, I played ball with him for many years. A good friend, went to school with him. Jay, Matt, went to junior high and high school with him, played ball with him. And Dale, the Florys have been a family friend, and Trent has coached my kids in baseball. So I feel like I kind of know these guys already. So this ought to be fun. And before we get started, I also want to thank all the attendees for submitting some really, really good questions. We probably won't be able to get to all of them, unfortunately, but we've done our best to cover a wide range of topics with these candidates. With that being said, we will go ahead and start with opening statements. Each candidate will have a total of limit of 3 minutes to make their case, and we'll go and do this in alphabetical order. So Jay, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay, first off, I want to thank the Douglas County Democrats for doing this. I know this is probably going to be a very well-attended event, and I'm very, very excited about it. I just want to say that I'm a Democrat. I'm not just on paper. I'm a Democrat in real life. I've actually been to our headquarters for classes and seminars, for fundraisings, for forums. I went to some of the county commission forums a couple years ago. I've fought for democratic values. I did what I could to try to get Paul Davis elected over that last governor who can't even stand to say his name anymore. But I've been filed for this job for this position for over 2.5 years. And I made this decision way back in 2017 because I knew that this was going to be my path. And it's a really risky one for me, to be quite honest, because I'm putting my not only my career, but also my retirement at risk. But I just can't not do it. This is what I'm supposed to do. I recently told the Journal World, and since 2017, I've been telling myself all along that I just do not want a dirty campaign. I don't want mudslinging. I don't want things to get off the rails. I don't want to divide our agency. But unfortunately, I feel like I've got to the point where I've tried really hard to do this, but we sit here on these forums and we talk about transparency, but I'm afraid that I feel like at times that we're not actually practicing it. So I had a conversation with a Journal World reporter, and I offered for them to have a look through my personnel file. I'll open it up for them, let them look at it, and they can do whatever they want with it because I'm not afraid to hide it. I'm not hiding anything, good and bad. I've made mistakes. I've owned them and I've learned from them. But I would like to see if all three of us candidates would be willing to do the same, because I think that's actually what true transparency is. And when it comes to leadership and experience, in my nearly 22 years, I've put in for promotions because I wanted to advance my career. I've known that I needed to be the leader for the agency. I needed to be a leader for this community, but especially for the people who would be working for me. And I just, if you've never put in for any promotions in your entire career, how does the community, how does the agency even know what kind of a leader you can be, if you can be a leader at all? I feel like we've had 20 some odd years of opportunities, and I've put in for my fair share of promotions. I've not gotten some, I've gotten most, but at least I've done the work to try to put myself in position to take over. I also find it really hurtful and disingenuous when I hear candidates state that they're opposed to any kind of jail expansion when that jail that we currently operate has been in operation for over 22 years. And not 1 hour has been spent working in that by somebody who says that they're against jail expansion. Not 1 hour has been spent working in that facility. And it's hurtful to the people who do work there, who know what's going on. And I'm really sorry to even go this route, but I feel like I've run out of options and I want the truth to come out. Maybe I've got skeletons in my closet I don't even know about. Okay, my time's up. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Jay. And Dale, you have your opening statements.
Was that for me?
Yes, for Dale.
Okay. Hello, I'm Dale Flory. I'm running for sheriff of Douglas County. First and foremost, I want to thank the Douglas County Democrats for hosting this community forum. In my nearly 24-year career at the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, I have worked in each of the court security, transports, warrants, and patrol. I have served the community as a volunteer firefighter and currently serve on the board of directors with Willow Springs Fire District number 3. I am a member of the Douglas County Sheriff's Office Underwater Search and Recovery Team, or DIVE team. and am a search specialist for Project Lifesaver. I have served on a Sheriff's Office Policy Review Board member and have conducted numerous investigations as a background investigator for our agency. I realized early on in my career that I wanted to work on the front lines, where I felt I could better serve the community on a personal level. I chose to work on the front lines during my career because I didn't want to lose that connection with the community that I serve. The amount of knowledge I've gained from working on the front lines has been invaluable. I'm now committed to serving the community at a different level, where I can be the catalyst for change in Douglas County. I am running for sheriff to bring about new direction for the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. I feel what sets me apart from the other candidates is my well-defined priorities that have been at the core of my campaign from the start. These priorities are mental health, social justice, transparency, and jail restructure. My priorities have not changed to fit our current environment. As sheriff, you want leadership that is willing to take a stand on issues that affect our community. The environment we are all living in right now is indeed a volatile one. Never before to this extent have I seen law enforcement viewed as the enemy to so many of our community members. The murder of George Floyd at the hands of law enforcement is precisely the reason why law enforcement needs to be held accountable. Law enforcement's core principle is to protect and serve. We are sworn to protect and serve everyone, period, end of story. Tragically, a few officers have brought disgrace to an honorable profession. If elected sheriff, I vow to create an environment of openness and accountability. This is how we begin to try and rebuild that public trust. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dale. And Doug?
Hello, everyone. I wanted to thank everyone first for who took time to submit questions and are taking the time out of their day to watch this forum. My name is Doug Woods, and I'm running for sheriff of Douglas County. I was born and raised here in Lawrence, Kansas, and I attended Lawrence Public Schools. For the past 33 years, I have served and protected the citizens of Douglas County, both as an employee of the sheriff's office and as an active member in our community. Over the course of my career, I have been deeply invested in every aspect of Douglas County's law enforcement practices. I have supervised employees in nearly every division of the sheriff's office. These experiences have given me firsthand knowledge that is necessary to lead our community as the sheriff. I've also served our community by volunteering on public service boards, in schools, and as a coach for several youth sports teams. And I also foster dogs through the Lawrence Humane Society. Additionally, I co-founded Toys, Take Our Youth Shopping, a program that facilitates positive interaction between disadvantaged youth and law enforcement. I also coordinate the Douglas County portion of the Kansas Law Enforcement Torch Run for Special Olympians. I have the dedication, vision, and firsthand experience necessary to ensure that our sheriff's office continues in the right direction. As the sheriff, I will continue to actively engage in service to our community and require my command staff, undersheriffs, captains, and so on, to serve in nonprofit boards and committees in our community. I will implement new policies and procedures to have more transparency between the sheriff's office and the community we serve. I will ensure access to mental health services to all of our sheriff's office employees and persons who are in our jail. I will ensure access to drug and alcohol counseling to all persons in our jail. I will ensure that our jail reentry program remains a nationally recognized program and that we continue to provide the best opportunities for those transitioning back into our community. I will ensure that our employees have the technology, the equipment, training, and support necessary to serve and protect our community. I will maintain the highest degree of fiscal responsibility and transparency about the money provided by our community and how it is used. I will ensure that lines of communication are open to all groups in our community and make sure their ideas and thoughts are heard. I will ensure that the safety of all persons in Douglas County remains the focus of the sheriff's office. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Doug. And thank you guys for those opening statements. And so with that, we'll get to our first question. And with this first question, I'm going to start with you on this, Dale. I think we all can agree that 2020 has been a very tumultuous year. Both citizens and public officials have struggled with the COVID-19 public health emergency, of social injustice, brought on by recent homicide of Black citizens at the hands of police. These events will continue to make demands on our public officials. What have you learned from these events, and how will they influence your priorities?
Unmute myself. There we go. Yeah, they definitely have influenced what people think. In regards to the current state of our community and the nation as a whole, my biggest concern is protecting both our citizens and law enforcement officers that serve them. It troubles me greatly that the actions of a few officers have led to the point that we are at today. Transparency and accountability are two crucial components in trying to rebuild the public trust that has been compromised. We must restore that public trust. If elected sheriff, my undersheriff, Clark Riles, will spearhead a social justice committee that will meet to facilitate an open dialogue between all parties. You can rest assured Black Lives Matter, Justice Matters, and other community organizations will be offered a seat at that table. I believe continued and expanded training, specifically beyond diversity training, for the Sheriff's Office staff is a key component to having a healthy community. We need to facilitate open dialogue between all communities, including the LGBTQ and other marginalized communities. Change will only occur when those involved are open to change. Clark and I are committed to leading this charge. As a person who cares deeply about humanity, I will not hesitate to act upon matters that are unjust, unlawful, or that create a greater divide in the relationships that we are trying to build. Criminal actions are criminal actions, whether it involves a member of the public or a law enforcement officer. Citizens and officers alike will be held accountable. I believe the public has a right to know when a substantiated claim of misconduct has been levied against any law enforcement officer. I also support the National Police Misconduct Database. Believe me when I say, law enforcement officers want the bad cops out of law enforcement just as everyone else does. Their egregious acts make it volatile for the overwhelmingly majority of good officers out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. I appreciate that. And I just want to let the attendees know and let the candidates know that these first set of questions will be 2-minute limit on those. I forgot to state that. All right. And Doug, what have you learned from these events, and how they influence your priorities if you're elected sheriff? You're going to have to unmute yourself, Doug.
I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
What concerns me the most is the systematic racism that goes on, and how do we renew our public trust with people. And I know systematic racism exists in the world. As a sheriff, I want to ensure that our sheriff's office employees, that's deputies and corrections officers, are not using race, sex, color. I plan on increasing our training from the state mandated 2 hours of racially biased policing to 6 to 8 hours, depending on which topic we're covering. The state requires 2 hours. We're going to have more than that. Looking at our policies, they have to be constantly reviewed, and looking at our lethal force policies and things like that. Looking at issues where we require officers or deputies to intervene if they see something that's out of line. Very similar with what occurred in Minneapolis. If you see something that's going on that's wrong, you need to intervene in that and stop that from happening. So those are the things that I think are important. The COVID issue has created a different world for us also, trying to reduce our exposure while we're in the public, also trying to reduce our exposure for those people that are coming to jail. It's made our job a lot more difficult, especially for the folks at the jail, trying to deal with new people coming into the jail, and how do we technically quarantine them to make sure that we don't end up with COVID in the jail. And they've done an awesome job out there of dealing with that issue. Patrol deputies and so on, they're a little bit differently. They'd handle a little bit differently because they do have to have more face-to-face or up-close contact with folks. So, wearing your protective mask and things like that, sanitizing things, those are all things that have come to the forefront as far as with the COVID issue. And it's made our job more unique, but we're still able to do our jobs effectively and efficiently.
All right, thanks, Doug. And Jay, what have you learned from these, and how would they influence your priorities?
So the code, honest with you, I work in the jail every day, and it was amazing to see the way that our facility and our administration took it seriously way before a lot of places did. So we were fortunate in the fact that the courts were able to just basically jettison part of our population down to a manageable number, but also we've had to just completely flip the system upside down in order to create quarantine spaces, to create tracking purposes, but also just the way that our staff interacts. Because honestly, if you look at it, the two ways that virus is going to come into that facility is through somebody being arrested or through an employee. And so we've had to really, really, really look at how we allow our employees to go on vacations and come back, or what they do on their days off, but mainly about the people coming in and how we test them and we vet what they're saying and what they're telling us, but also as well as quarantining them and checking them all the time. But on top of that, the community, just the environment that we're in since May 25th, when George Floyd was murdered, has really, somebody told me, oh, this is a terrible time to be running for sheriff. And my response is, actually, it's the perfect time for me to be running for sheriff, because I feel like the environment is ripe for the right person to step in and actually turn this system on its heel and point it in the new direction that everybody demands. Everybody is on board. We're talking about it. The conversations are in the forefront of everybody's minds. And the time for action is now. This is not only do people want to do it, leaders like me are looking forward to do it. And it's going to be very dirty work, very hard work. But the days of one bad apple ruins a bunch, that's gone. We're not in a position where we can have bad apples. The days of the good old boy system and the status quo, those need to find their place in history. It's time for us to move this progressive community that Lawrence is into a future of justice. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Jay. And with this question, we're going to start with Doug on this one. Lawrence Community Police Review Board recently shared their frustration with their lack of access to police records and transparency within the police department. The question is, does the Sheriff's Department have a citizen review board? If not, would you implement one, and what would it look like?
Currently, the sheriff's office does not have a citizens review board, and I understand the frustrations with that. And I think that goes back to more of what we're all talking about here as far as transparency. And I think in order to have a citizens review board, you have to pick the people from your community that want to be part of it. You have to have the right people who want to make change and help us make change. And having people from different factions of the community, different groups and stuff like that, so that there is plenty of room at the table for everybody to be involved. The one thing that I do want to do is with a community review board is have them attend training. And one of the trainings that's available out there is what's called Force Science, and it's a 40-hour class, and it talks to you and teaches you about these types of incidences where you're looking at excessive force and things like that, and how people react to different situations, how officers react to different situations. And I think you have to train people, not just training the cops, but I think you have to train people who would be on that board for an understanding. But you have to get that broad spectrum of people who want to help us make the changes that we need to make. And we do need to make some changes. And I think that's the basis of where you would start with that, the Citizen Review Board. And I think it would be something that would be ever evolving too. As things change in our world, we have to be able to change with it as a Citizen Review Board, and to keep moving forward, to look at all the different options and things like that. And if there new training comes along that's available for people as well as law enforcement, then we have to look at doing that also. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Doug. And Dale, if you were to implement one, what would it look like, a citizens review board?
Yeah, I am completely in favor of a citizens review board, with transparency again being one of my top priorities. public insight and perspective is crucial to building the public trust back to where it was. There would need to be some type of representation of a cross-section of our community, and not just specifically one group or anything like that. I would ask that applications be made to serve on the board, and there would have to be some form of vetting process to determine that a potential member would be committed to serving for a period of time. It's not going to be you're on for a couple of months and then someone else rolls in. We need commitment and dedication for a period of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. And Jay, what are your thoughts on the Citizens Review Board?
I've actually been talking about a Citizens Review Board since I filed in 2017. The Lawrence Police Department is in a unique situation where they have the Lawrence Police Officers Association, which is basically their collective bargaining union. It's a union. And so a lot of the decisions have to go through the union process, and they're a part of the decision making. Whereas the Sheriff's Office, we don't have a union. So I feel like we won't be able to compare apples to apples when it comes to the Lawrence Police Department's review board and ours, because ours will actually have teeth. I want culturally competent people, like Doug was talking about. I don't want to look like I'm handpicking people who will only choose to validate the police officer's view. But what I do want is I want people to come in, learn what the Sheriff's Office does, go through our Citizens Academy, which is hugely educational as to what we do on a day-to-day basis. But I also feel like a Citizen Review Board can not only be used for citizen complaints, but possibly even some low-level use of force situations. But more importantly, on a more regular basis, is more of the best practices, to where maybe we have a situation in the correctional facility or on the street that we've never really encountered. We take the video or the evidence or whatever it is to the board, let them look at it and say, here's what happened. This is all within our policy, but is this best practice? Is this what we should be doing? Is this what you expect from us? And I feel like that would just kind of be a perfect way to use these culturally competent people who bring all of their own life's experiences into this, to look at these things from an outside perspective, because we've always looked at everything from a police perspective, because that's what all three of us have done for all of our lives, basically. So it'd be nice to get them in there to say, I understand what you're saying and I understand what you did, but I don't really like the way that looks, or I don't like how that happened. Well, then let's figure out what we can do to maybe change it or move it or do something different. I just think the options are limitless. So I actually look very much forward to creating one.
All right, thanks, Jay. And with this next question, I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Dale. Within the last few months, there has been a big spotlight on the hiring, training, and the recruiting practices of police departments. In the light of these recent developments, what policies and practices would you put in place that would update the training of current officers and also address the recruitment and hiring of minority officers?
One of my issues, and I've spoken to my undersheriff if elected, Clark Riles, is we do need more people of color in law enforcement. That's why we've decided to pursue that avenue. There are a lot of things that go into this. It's a touchy subject, but it's something that needs to be addressed. And I feel like we are on our way to making it better. I don't want to really say exactly what it is, because we don't know yet. But it's something it's coming down the pipe, and we need to figure this out.
All right, thanks, Dale. And Jay, what do you feel about the current training of the current officers and the hiring and recruitment of minority officers?
Yeah, that's I could speak a whole lot longer than 2 minutes, but I'll try to jam it all together here. So training, I think, has always been an issue. And only recently, in the last few years, have I realized that all of my police training has been fear-based training. We learn from when we were a baby deputy. We watch videos of the very worst things that can happen to us. We watch videos of officers being executed, of being drugged by cars and hit by cars, and these horrendous things. And you learn to train for the very worst case scenario. Well, then you take that fear-based training out into the world with you, and you expect that those things are that's the only thing that's happened, that everybody is out there to kill you. And I think that that's part of the reason that we find ourselves in some of these situations. However, we do still have to be prepared for the very worst. That's what we are. That's what we do. When the worst thing in the world happens, we're the ones that show up first, and we're expected to handle it. I feel like training needs to be more consistent. In fact, I'll give training into our last forum, but basically, I feel like we need to have scenario-based stress training. Put these officers in these situations. Let's see how they react. Let's see what they do. And maybe we learn as an agency that this person is not ready for this, or maybe they learn as an officer, I can't do this. You look at the murder of Philando Castile, and he was murdered by a scared man wearing a police uniform. That man was scared to death, and Philando Castile died because of his fear. And maybe that could have been found somewhere in the training process. Be like, hey, this guy's just he blacks out, or something like that. The sheriff's office, we just recently invested in like a $40,000. It's called a stress vest, but it's basically for scenario training. It puts people in stressful situations, and we'll see how they react. As far as recruitment, I want to talk a lot about it, but little bitty kids, they need to see police officers that look like them. Not in high schools. The police need to be in little schools with the little people. That's slow money, slow investment, but we have got to invest in our youth and our education. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay. And Doug, I know you spoke to this a little bit earlier about the hours in the training. What do you think would be a good policy for updating the training and recruiting minority officers?
I'll speak to the training part first. I think with the sheriff's office, we've started doing de-escalation training, which I think is huge. We're working also with the crisis intervention training, the CIT training, and I think those are very valuable. And then I appreciate Jay with the inoculation training word. Something that I think is very valuable for what we're doing. And as Jay said, it's been one of my plans all along. We have to be able to put our officers and our deputies in stressful situations to see how they're going to react in those situations, because I think that will tell you a lot about a person. And we have a younger generation of deputies that are coming out, making sure that they understand what they're getting into, and we as the administrators and the bosses, we understand what kind of product we're getting from our training. And that goes back to what I said, the stress inoculation training. You have talk about de-escalation training. Our communication skills have to be upfront and forward, how we're talking to people, how we're dealing with people, those all go into de-escalation. And then your crisis intervention. How are you dealing with people who may be in crisis or suffering from some mental illness? Those are big issues that we deal with on a daily basis. And we have to make sure that our officers are trained properly and adequately to deal with those situations. When it comes to our recruitment, again, I'll agree with Jay, and some of the things I've done is we start out with the young folks, and we're working in the grade schools and doing things like the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program, Bigs in Schools, where we're getting a positive interaction with young people, and that's where it all starts. The kids are our future, and 40 years from now, one of these kids that we're talking to may end up being our sheriff of Douglas County, and that's what we're looking forward. So in recruiting, we're working with high school students, we're working with junior colleges, colleges, going to military schools, military bases to try and recruit people as they're getting out of the military, job fairs and things like that, because we have to do a better job of recruiting minorities into law enforcement. Practicing those types of things and continuing down that road to make sure we're getting the best candidates possible. It's on us to go out and recruit those people to come to work for the sheriff's office.
All right, thanks, Doug. And I think I speak for all the attendees. The stress inoculation training, that's something we're definitely going to have to look up after this show. That's something I've never heard of. So, but we got the next question, and we're going to start with you on this, Jay. What are the top 3 challenges facing the Douglas County Sheriff's Department, and how will you address those challenges?
Well, number one, I think is the topic that is in the forefront of everybody's mind and in the conversation is the jail expansion. And I feel like the next sheriff is basically at the will of the legislative branch of our government with the city or the county commission is whatever they decide to do is what we're going to have to do. Now, I feel my personal opinion is that the jail expansion is not going to happen. So our job is going to be to looking into all alternatives and new alternatives, not just the ones that are currently in place. I think that we've got our reentry and the courts have done a bang up job as far as getting these programs in place and running. Some of them have hit their stride. Some of them have a little bit of work yet to go, but we cannot just rest on these. We have to move into new system that they're looking at as far as like kind of triaging the cases as high, medium, and low, and moving them through the courts appropriately. I think that's going to be a big help. Now, the second one is the community, the environment, and the community of just kind of the civil unrest around law enforcement in general. My belief is that it is time for us as law enforcement to sit down, shut up, and listen to what the people have to tell us. They've been trying to tell us for a long, long time, and we've been telling them, hey, it's a very stressful job. It's hard to do, and that's very much true, but it's still not working. We're still not getting the buy-in and the trust that we need. So it's our job as law enforcement to earn the trust. We can't just go out and demand it or ask for it. We have to earn it, and we're going to earn it by opening our doors, by being transparent, by asking them to hold us accountable. You know, if something comes up, let's say an officer shoots and kills a young Black man in this community, I hope to be able to have created an environment where the community trusts me to say, I can't give you this video. I can't give it to you for 10 days. And in 10 days, I expect you to come back and bang on my door and stand on my desk and demand it. I want the people to hold us accountable as leaders, and as law enforcement, we have to capitulate into this new environment. I know that's only two. I'm sorry, I'm out of time.
I think the top three, or I'll go with my number one first, and I think that is re-earning community trust. And I think it starts with a lot of the things we've already talked about. How are we training our officers? How can we be more accessible? How can we be more friendly and more approachable in the community? And those things I think are huge. And that's one of the things that I want to make sure we're doing is being a nicer and more approachable agency. And I think that starts with, just stopping when you're driving around and talking to people. And that was some things we were taught in the old days that, when you work for Sheriff Johnson, you work for Sheriff Anderson, he expected you to stop and talk to people while you're out driving around. And if you drove by somebody and didn't wave at them, you might have gotten a talking to by one of the sheriffs, because those are the people that we serve. So we need to be friendlier, and we need to really work at everything we can to re-earn the public trust. I don't disagree with the fact that I believe 99% of the cops or law enforcement officers in the United States are the guys doing the right things for the right reasons, and guys and gals doing the things for the right reasons. It's that 1% that has cost us doing our jobs and trying to do our jobs the best we can, the public trust. So we have to work very hard at getting that trust back. And it starts with communication and things like that, being involved in our community and just being a nicer, more friendly, approachable agency. Number two, of course, is the jail. As the jail, there's going to be a vote coming up. There's a sheriff. The sheriff, he's going to play the cards that he's dealt. And, it's a statutory thing that's required by the state. We have to have a jail. And we're going to provide the best services we can to the inmates and to our employees. And that means making sure that they're safe and secure while we're there. We have to provide medical care, and mental health care for those folks while they're in our jail. If we're full, we have to look at different alternatives to housing inmates in other jurisdictions. And that right there creates a problem. They're away from their family. They're away from their support. They don't get to see their children. They don't get to see their lawyers on a regular basis either. So I think that's one of the things that we have to really look at when we're talking about the jail expansion, is providing the services to the inmates that they need. And through entry, yes, I agree with Jay too. We got some great programs. If there's other programs out there that we need to explore and implement, then that's what we need to do. Number three, I would think it kind of goes back to training. We have to make sure that we are training our officers to be the best officers they can be out there, our deputies and our corrections officers, because we are still serving the community and serving the citizens of Douglas County. And we have to make sure we're putting the best people out there to do those jobs, to take care of our citizens in the best way possible.
All right, thanks, Doug. And Dale, what do you think are the top 3 challenges facing the Douglas County Sheriff's Department?
I would agree with both gentlemen. I think social justice is right up there. That's the most current pressing issue right now. We need to find ways to get the public, the community involved in having those discussions that we need to speak about, having those hard discussions that we need to speak about. Law enforcement is not perfect. We don't claim to be perfect. We need to learn and build that public trust back. I'm opposed to the jail expansion. I've said that for a period of time. I think we need to reinvest in social services as opposed to incarcerating people. You look at affordable housing, education, food subsidies, healthcare, job training, stuff like that needs to be addressed to keep those people out of jail. Those are 2 of my 3. And needless to say, if we do expand the jail, if the commission decides to do that, we're looking at 60 additional officers that would have to staff that jail if the expansion was made. We're struggling now to have that many officers. Current staffing, it's difficult. So I don't know. I don't want to see a jail built and then it just sit there idly by. I mean, that's one of my biggest concerns. That money should be reinvested or repurposed into these social services to try to keep people out of jail in the first place. And then also transparency and officer misconduct, I think, are 2 big issues that we need to address as well. I was one of 2 people. I'm the only one that's still currently working at the sheriff's office that tested body cameras several years ago. And that goes along the lines of jail transparency. That is one of my priorities. It looks like I'm out of time.
And thanks, Dale. And that kind of goes into our next question. And Dale's on the record, so I want to give Doug and Jay a chance to get on the record as far as your stand on jail expansion, just in a minute or less. Just how you feel, and we'll start with you, Doug.
As far as jail expansion goes, I really don't have an opinion on it. As the sheriff, we're required by law to have a jail, and we're required to meet the basic health needs and mental health needs of our inmates. We don't get to pick and choose who comes to our jail. We don't get to pick and choose when they get out of our jail. Those things are decided by the courts. Their sentences are decided by the courts. We're there to do is provide safe and secure housing for the inmates and provide a safe environment for those people working in the jail. One of the things we really, it's kind of a lost deal is the sheriff, he doesn't have a choice of who comes to jail. He can't just open the door and kick 20 people out the door. It's all up to the courts. And I think, and we also have to look at the legislature, which laws are, each year the legislature goes through and rewrites laws and updates laws and stuff like that. Again, the sheriff has no control over what the legislators do as far as which laws and those kinds of things. So we're just kind of, we're caught there. We're the guys that keep the gate, as you might want to speak or say, but we don't have any say in that. The district attorney decides who's charged and what they're charged with. The judge determines the bond. The judge determines the sentences, and then when they're released, that's up to, it's just, we get an order from the judge saying this person is to be released. That's how it really comes down to jail. We have to provide these services, and a lot of these things that are going on with our inmates, they're not able to see their families if they're housed in other locations. They're not able to see their lawyer on a regular basis or in a timely fashion sometimes, because they're farmed down, or they're housed in Butler County or Emporia, or the different places we house inmates at. How are they able to work these deals out with, or not deals, but, have communication with their lawyers and so on, be able to see their children and those types of things, be able to be part of our reentry programs if they're not in our jail. So these are the issues that we face every day, and we're trying to do the best we can with the situation we have. And it's really not up to us. There's going to be a vote, and whatever that vote is, the sheriff's office has to make do with what we have, and we'll keep doing the best we can with what we have in front of us.
Kwam, you ready for me? Okay, so jail expansion obviously is a huge topic, and oh, I'm sorry, Kwam, did you have something?
No.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry. I'll parrot a little bit of what Captain Woods has said, is that we as the executive branch have no say in who comes to our jail and how long they stay, and especially what happens to them once they leave. We simply are the gatekeepers. However, Sheriff McGovern had seen to it to put these programs in place to arm them with the tools that they need to reintegrate back into society. That's our reentry program. We were taking people and putting them right back into the same environments and expecting new outcomes, and that's the definition of stupidity. So McGovern saw that we needed to work, but then the courts sent us too many people. We send them out to be farmed out in other facilities, and those people are no longer able to utilize our programs that were working so well. I honestly feel like the jail expansion is not going to happen. And if it does, it does. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I feel like right now we need to be talking about new alternatives, new things. What are we going to do? Because I don't want to wait for the vote to say, okay, now we got to start thinking about it. We need to know right now what it is. We need to have some plans in place. If we can keep the jail population where it's at today, 125, 130, we can operate this jail for years and years. However, I just don't know that we're going to be able to do that. But I hope we can, and I hope we can work together to figure it out. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jay. And so these next set of questions is going to be 1 minute limit on these. So it's going to be kind of rapid fire. And Doug, I'm going to start with you on this. Considering everything that's going on with the protesting and everything, law enforcement has been under scrutiny and under the spotlight. So what are your plans for addressing the mental health of our officers who may feel overwhelmed by the job? And how would you identify those individuals to get them the help that they need?
Currently with the sheriff's office, we have peer support. We have partnerships with Bert Nash and things, and there's an app that Sheriff McGovern started on our phone to help officers deal with any kind of mental health issues. We also have several chaplains that work for the sheriff's office or volunteer for the sheriff's office to talk to officers. So it's kind of a twofold thing. If the officer himself or herself is admitting or not, they're feeling like they're having some stress or having problems dealing with some of the issues that are going on right now. And there's some people that we deal with some ugly situations. They themselves can reach out for help. We as their fellow coworkers or their supervisors or we can also keep an eye on our employees to make sure that, hey, is this person having an issue because they worked a really bad car accident last night? A week or so ago, we had a bad car accident where 6 people died in the car accident. We'll make sure that we're keeping an eye on those folks to see how they're dealing with it. Peer support folks, they're constantly looking out for the employees also. Hey, we know we had these 3 or 4 deputies that were involved in this situation. Let's make sure we're keeping an eye on them. Let's talk to them and see how things are going, and see if they need some further assistance or some further help. Do we need to get them some more help that beyond our expertise to say a peer support person? Can we recommend them to go to see somebody for some counseling or stuff like that? We have to kind of police ourselves as well as keeping an eye on each other also.
Okay, thanks, Doug. And Dale, what are your thoughts on the mental health of our officers and what plans we have in place to deal with that?
Yeah, it does need to be addressed. I think we are addressing it by those elements that Captain Woods spoke of, which are vital to mental health for our officers. One thing that comes to mind is if we have a major incident, we generally like to have a debriefing afterwards. So everybody that was involved in that incident, they can come talk amongst friends and people that were actually at that incident. And there's avenues there that we can talk to the pastors, the clergy, or peer support, and have that backup, if you will, which is vital. I believe people really adhere to that, and I think there are a lot of great opportunities that come from that, because it's something that needs to be talked about. You don't want to keep it inside and let it just stem and stem and stem. So I think the debriefings are a fantastic idea after some type of major event. You're not going to do that over just a normal accident or something like that, but major events that could cause trauma to the individual officers.
All right. Thanks, Dale and Jay.
Did you know last year was the first year in the history of law enforcement that more officers died of suicide than by line of duty deaths? Mental health for law enforcement is my absolute paramount #1 priority, because I don't want to send mentally unhealthy people. I wouldn't send somebody on the street that had a blown ACL. I wouldn't send somebody out with a broken foot. Just because it doesn't show up on an x-ray doesn't mean that it's not there. I am a PTSD survivor. I was diagnosed in 2015 and 2017. Like, I know where I was and I know what brought me there. I was born in a great household. Parents never divorced. I have no family trauma. I have nothing. This is all work related, and it's a series of incidents over a career. It's called cumulative stress disorder. It's boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of unpacked traumas. And then all of a sudden one day you find yourself in a position that you can no longer function. And that's exactly where I was. And I was fortunate. I got the help I needed. And honestly, when I came out of my treatment was in late 2017. And that's when I decided I had to run for sheriff, because I wanted to make the change that we need. So my plan is #1 is to create the environment where it's okay to say I'm not okay. I don't just get back in the saddle. You got a job to do. That's BS. If you can't do it, I don't want you doing it. For years we've sent mentally unhealthy officers back out on the street who put themselves in horrible positions, and even worse, they put our citizens in horrible positions. Okay, my time's up. I could for hours on this, but thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Okay, I agree with all you guys. I mean, if the mental health of our law enforcement is not right, then our society won't be right. I totally agree. And so this one we're going to start with you, Dale. And in under a minute, if elected, what would you plan to accomplish in your first 90 days on the job? And are there any changes you would like to make immediately?
Yeah, excuse me. The Social Justice Committee, I think, is at the forefront of that. We need to get the community together, all walks of life, and try to figure out how we can bridge the gap. It's a big opportunity we have right now, and we need to find ways, because I mean, let's be honest, the community is at its wit's end with law enforcement, and we're the targets now. It shouldn't be like that. We should be the people that the community runs to if they need help. I mean, it's turned the tide, and we need to fix that. So I think that would be the very first thing that I would do.
All right, thanks, Dale. And Doug, are there any changes you would make immediately if elected sheriff?
I agree with Dale. I think one of the things we have to do is we have to start these conversations and start building that foundation for earning our public trust back. And the citizens have to trust us and want to get along with us. And one of the things that I plan to do within the first 90 days is I'm going to hire somebody from the outside who has no association, no friendships, doesn't even live in Douglas County, to be the person that would conduct our internal affairs or professional standards investigations. I've been in that position of investigating fellow officers. It's an uncomfortable position to be in. If you bring somebody in who has no relationship with anybody that works in the sheriff's office, I think that helps our transparency. I think that helps get the best information we can from that investigation, because this person doesn't know those folks. And with that transparency, start working with these conversations with the community, all facets of the community of where do we need to start? How do we need to start building this? And it's not going to be built overnight. It's going to take time. But I think reaching out to the different groups in the community, starting that conversation, and then, as I say, start digging the hole for the foundation so we can start building this from the ground up. Because I think we have to start with a great foundation first before we can jump to anything else. And that's how anything's built. And we start from the ground and we start working our way up.
All right, thanks, Doug. And Jay, first 90 days, what changes would you make?
Well, 90 days is obviously, it sounds like a long time, but it's not, especially on such a grand scale that we're talking about. These changes that we're trying to make the first steps for the next generation to finish. But right out of the gate, obviously, there will be some restructuring of the sheriff's office to streamline some things, but also the Citizens Review Board will immediately begin the process of building it, what we expect it to look like, and what we expect them to be doing, but also start identifying people who are interested. The other thing is that the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council is already established. They're doing great work because they're trying to figure out how we're going to figure, these social justice problems, the housing and the jail population and the mental health and all that stuff. I would get my elected undersheriff, Stacy Simmons, will be on that board because she has a passion for all of these, but she is also tied into each and every one of these programs with a huge knowledge base. But she's going to hold them accountable because their decisions are going to directly affect the job that as the jail is expanded, not expanded, or whatever. So we have a very huge vested interest in what that council decides, does, looks at, and what they do. The last thing I do is I'm going to go get us a new judge. I'm going to stand on somebody's desk and scream, "We need a new judge in Douglas County."
Thanks, Jay. And that kind of ties into our next question. We'll start with you, Doug. Tell us a little bit about your undersheriff and what he or she will bring to the table.
Well, my undersheriff is not from within the sheriff's office. And when I decided to run for sheriff, that was one of the things that I looked at. Who do I know that I think has the same thought process that I do? Troy is much like me. Troy's a 25-year veteran of the Lawrence Police Department. Troy has worked in every division. He's been a supervisor. He's been a patrol deputy. He's been in the drug unit. He's worked in all these different divisions within the police department. So he has an understanding of how the job is done. Now, Troy will be at a disadvantage. We do our jobs significantly different as a sheriff's office than what the police department does. He'll have a learning curve, but I think Troy is the kind of guy that will pick up that quickly. I needed somebody with like his Troy, someone who brings new ideas and new thoughts and things like that. Because he comes from a different agency, they may do some things better than we do. We may do some things better than them, so we can compare those ideas. I also want somebody who's not what I would call a yes man. If we come up with a crazy idea, something we don't believe is going to work, he doesn't believe is going to work, I need somebody like Troy to say, Doug, this isn't a good idea. We shouldn't go this way. Maybe we need to make a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. This might work that way, but you have to have some new thoughts and new ideas. That was my thinking on who I picked as an undersheriff.
All right, thanks, Doug. And Dale, you're undersheriff, and what will he bring? What will he or she bring to the table?
Clark Riles would be my undersheriff. He brings leadership. He was actually my supervisor for a number of years, and that's where I've learned to respect him. His attitude, his work ethic, how he treats people, how staff responds to him. He's well respected within the sheriff's office. And obviously he's a person of color, and I think that is definitely needed to be a top law enforcement official, being a person of color, especially in these times right now. Beyond that, I've known Clark, and he exemplifies what I think people want to be. And I am more than committed to Clark as being my undersheriff.
All right, thanks, Dale. And Jay, you alluded to a little bit. You're undersheriff. Is there any more you want to elaborate on that?
Oh yeah, yeah. First off, all three undersheriff candidates are absolute studs. I would be happy working for any one any of them. But Stacy Simmons would be my choice. She's a captain of the sheriff's office. She hired in with the sheriff's office within about a year, 6 months after I did. So she and I have grown up together. But what is special about her and I's relationship is that she takes no well, let's clean this up. She takes no guff from me. She holds me accountable. She knows the leader I can be. She pushes me to be the very best me I can be. I don't, where in the areas where some of the administrative areas that maybe I lack some experience, she shows extreme strength. But we've always joked that because she and I ran the very first Citizens Academy, and she made the point to everybody that I was the microphone and she was the clipboard. And so I prefer to call her a trapper keeper, but she is the exact perfect person to carry me to where I need to be the best leader in this agency and in this community. So the other thing is, but as much as I love her and trust her, you know, you're going to be voting for us, not our undersheriffs.
All right. Thanks, Jay. I appreciate that. And we're going to start with this next question with you, Dale. And under a minute, this election, all of you have registered as Democrats. Why are you a Democrat, and how do you align with Democratic Party values?
I've been a Democrat for, let's see, over 12 years, I believe. I and my wife is a Democrat as well. Prior to that, I was unaffiliated, and prior to that, I actually was a Republican. I've got a sense of the values and morals that the Democrats have is more in line with my vision. I feel like I'm somewhat, I guess you could say, enforcement, a moderate Democrat as far as firearms and the possession of firearms. But beyond that, I fully believe in Democratic views, and I am a proud supporter of the Democratic Party.
All right. Thanks, Dale. And Doug?
My story is a little bit different. Initially, I wanted to support one of the other candidates for sheriff. And I wanted to say who was going to be our next boss. And I knew that there was going to be 2 to 3 to 4 candidates running for Democrat. So I switched my party affiliation back in November. And as things progressed, people started asking me to run for sheriff. I was approached by people in the Democratic Party to run for sheriff. So I made my decision to run for sheriff. You know, the sheriff is a nonpartisan office, and I understand, you know, the difference between Democrats and Republicans. You know, as a Democrat, I would consider myself a moderate. You know, about social equality, you know, upholding civil rights, those types of things are what I stand for. I don't know if it really matters what's behind your name as far as an initial. Now, I know some people believe very strongly about that. But I had made my switch back in November, and I was going to stick with my decision that I'd made, even after being approached about running for sheriff in early January and into February, that I wasn't going to switch back to being a Republican just to run for sheriff. But I wanted to have a say in who was going to be the next sheriff. And as a Republican, I wouldn't have that. So that's why I made my switch.
All right. Thanks, Doug. And Jay?
So I am a Democrat. I went to the Pride Parade in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with my undersheriff and her wife, and I won a hula hoop contest there. I mean, I believe in a woman's autonomy. I believe that weapons of war belong in the hands of those who wage war. I'm a gun owner, but I think AR-15s are built simply for mass carnage of human bodies. I believe that unions, a strong union, is the only thing pushing against unfettered capitalism. You know, when it comes to, I'm fiscally fairly conservative, but socially, I am as far fringe liberal as you can get. I'm almost to the point of libertarian. I don't understand why weed is not legal. I don't understand why the state has not capitalized on it. And especially since 2016, if you are still willing to stay in the party of that president, I'm not sure we can have a good conversation. I think he is detestable, and I think it's sickening the way that he has divided our country. And I just, hey, I'm your people, you are my people.
All right. Thanks so much, Jay. And with that, that is all the questions that we have tonight. I want to thank all the candidates. And now what we'll do is we'll have closing remarks, and each candidate will get chance to talk and state their case, and you get a limit of 2 minutes. And Doug, we'll go ahead and start with you.
All right, thank you. Today, more than any other time, law enforcement is under a microscope. Through this lens, these problems are being identified and progress can be made. Part of our current mission statement with the Sheriff's Office is integrity is the basis for community trust. Our community deserves transparency. Through this, we will increase our trust with those we protect and serve. It is vital that the Sheriff's Office has a good relationship with our community, and we can always do a better job at that. I strongly believe in order to effectively and efficiently provide public safety services for everyone in our community, we must continually reevaluate, recommit, and renew our mission. This includes listening to our community organizations and understanding their goals and issues. Throughout my career, I've spoken with and listened to many community members from many different diverse backgrounds, races, and religions, and I am paying close attention to the tragedies that are happening around us. I am keenly aware that we must do a lot more to be forthright and transparent with information to increase the trust of the public. As a community, we are facing many complex and challenging issues. Through my 33 years of experience, I believe I am the person to lead the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, and I thank everybody for their time this evening.
Thanks, Doug. And Dale, your closing remarks? You might have to unmute that, Dale.
Thank you so much.
There
Sorry
we
about
go.
that.
No problem.
In closing, I want the community to know that my campaign for sheriff of Douglas County is a team approach. We at the Douglas County Sheriff's Office have been blessed with quality individuals that are dedicated to serving our community. I truly believe the frontline employees are the spokes of the wheel that make this agency what it is. Over the course of my career, I have seen firsthand these frontline employees have very valuable insight and suggestions to offer. Often because they are not in a command staff position, these employees are not asked for their input. This needs to change, and it needs to change on a community involvement level as well. The Douglas County community has a vested interest in how the Sheriff's Office operates. I will seek out community input and work closely with all community members and agencies in order to best serve those that we are sworn to protect and serve. Studies were completed by independent agency entities years ago, and recommendations were made on how to best address overcrowding in our jail. Quite frankly, we have dropped the ball in this regard. We are now scrambling to find quick solutions because of inaction at that time. We must fix this now. If elected, and consistent with my team approach, Under Sheriff Clark Riles will be instrumental in the leadership of our agency as well. Clark and I firmly believe Douglas County needs a person of color in the top law enforcement leadership role. I can think of no better person than Clark to serve as my undersheriff. Please visit my website, floryforsheriff.com, to learn more about Clark and I and the vision that we have for law enforcement in Douglas County. Thank you again to the Douglas County Democrats for hosting this event, and thank you to the community for engaging in conversation. A vote for Dale Flory for sheriff is a vote for much needed change in Douglas County. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. And Jay?
So I want to thank everybody that's tuned into this. I imagine you had a pretty good turnout. This is pretty hotly contested. The reason you're watching this forum is because you want to be an informed voter. And in this day and age, that's a bit of a superpower in this Trump leadership by division world we find ourselves in. So I just ask you to do your homework, ask the hard questions. I hope I've shown you that my heart and my passion is in becoming your next sheriff. I'm only 44 years old. I have years to dedicate to this. I'm not going to be one and done. I'm not doing it for the title. I'm not doing it for the money. You can keep them both. I don't care. I've prided myself on always doing the right thing for the right reason. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. But every mistake I've made, I've owned it and I've learned from it and I've moved on. With the murder of George Floyd, like we talked about, we have the perfect environment. We find ourselves in a vacuum with public support to make a true shift in our current criminal justice system, and it starts right here locally. Think globally, act locally. And I am the candidate to do this. I'm not a politician. I don't just throw groups of buzzwords together to try to tell you what I think you want me to hear, or what I think you want to hear. I've got strong convictions. I'm really ready to listen to what you want me to hear. We're in this together. I honestly feel like if you want to make systemic changes, you need Stacy and I to pick up that flag and carry it proudly. Status Quo and the Good Old Boy Network, they need to find their homes in the history of this agency. And I look forward to ushering in a new progressive leadership that this community demands and that we all deserve. Your vote, and I'm reading this, let's see, it says, your vote for Jay Armbrister is the change you demand and the change we deserve. And I think that just perfectly sums up what it is that I'm trying to do. Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. And I want to, wrapping this up, I want to thank all three of you guys for taking the time to answer these questions. I know this is not easy, having questions thrown where you don't know, what they're going to be. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. And I want to also thank all the people for attending as well. And remember, early voting by mail and in person begins on July 15th for the primary election on August 4th. Thank you, everybody. Have a safe evening. Good night.